All right, we got another beautiful golf course here this person's playing. I think we're going to focus most on this swing is just some of the differences and nuances that you can have with a modern approach, where we're coming kind of going from in to in. And so this is going to start off that way. We're going to see how the hands really kind of work inside and underneath the plane. Um, Might as well draw a couple of those bad boys on there. But so with this, we're really going to open the face up. And at this angle here, we're seeing how our face is kind of pointing up towards the sky. And so, in relation to how everything's going to work out, we're just going to have to come at a very steep position. And sometimes, if we get the club too far up like this, more often than not, we're going to have a handsy finish. So, getting up into kind of our first check here, we've got the club head well inside, the hands, still staying inside that triangle there. The thing this player does a really good job on is keeping our head and our body in plane all the way through the backswing. And so it's always a great tell if you can, kind of encirculate something like that. And so we can see how all the way back that head is staying inside. And so this is awesome because it's going to preserve our level. When we start to have the head move around too much forward, back, upright kind of thing, it's going to change our spine angle, particularly if we start to stand up. Now, we want to have some type of a lower body squat and turn as we go through. And what can happen is if you get too far underneath your original setup, is that you end up getting stuck behind you. And so if you combine that with an inside to inside swing plane, which is what we have here, we're going to have this really aggressive upward motion to try and get us through. Because if we're not fast enough with the hands, we're going to end up hitting a really big block. The advantage of having the inside to inside is a kind of a closed club face. And so we're not trying to use too much hands to close it. We're trying to really use more of our body and the rotation of our hips to do the work. So as this player starts to come down, we're starting to dip down in that lane. At this position, the club shaft is very much in line with the forearm, which means we're in a really good spot. I would say the hands, we'd like to see them a little bit too far. We want to see them more in front of us. They're kind of right in along our hips. And so this is indicating that our hands are actually going to start to flip. We're not preserving that wrist angle. Doesn't mean we're casting it, but it's definitely one of those things where we want to feel like we get the butt of the club closer towards the golf ball. So we're not trying to have this kind of overtaking of the right hand over the left as we're approaching and making contact with that ball. And so coming down into the impact area, we can see just how straight we've kind of lost all of that angle of the club. Um, and we are now basically in a pretty good spot with the club face. We're relatively aligned with our spine there, um, but we're well too inside. The hands are in a good spot, but the club, as you can see, is well underneath the swing plane. And so what's going to end up happening is this really violent upward motion. And so this player, as they come through, they don't time it up right, and we're going to see a big old push out to the right. But I think the fancy footwork that this player has in particular is after we have contact, we're going to see this large upward force to try and get us. We're not having a lot of the rotation, and so part of that is shown in the how square our hips are in this position here. Tough to see at this angle, but the left hip is a little bit open, but we haven't cleared the hips, and so once again, if we have this take where we come really far from the inside, we have to get the hips clear. Otherwise, this is inevitable. We're either going to hit a really bad hook because we're trying to save the hands, but more often than not, we're going to push this thing well to the right. So this player does, because he doesn't clear the hips until basically this part, is he's starting to lean back, and we can see now the rotation starts to come forward, and it happens at such a late time where there's not a lot of stability on the ground that we actually see the feet kind of do a little dance move. And so we have a Michael Jackson finish all the way out over here. Sometimes this is indicative of a baseball player too, where they get that weight really far on the outside of that heel, and instead of kind of trying to capture that energy, they just let it go, and we have this funky little finish. But there's actually a really cool player that does this, Hun Sung Choi. But um, there's a lot of varying commentary going on with that swing. But overall, it's a very freeing motion. to just let it all go.